Hi, everybody. My name is John Parker. I'm a member of the Sparrow Living sales team, and I'm proud to introduce you to Sparrow Living, innovative creators of active adult living for those 55 and 62 years of age and older. On behalf of Saleha, Mara, Sage communities, all supported by Sparrow Living, we are excited to offer up this virtual interactive session featuring Ms. Carol Marak. Before we start our presentation, I would like to tell you a little bit more about Sparrow Living and the wonderful amenities we have to offer our residents. Sparrow Living offers an intriguing and active adult lifestyle for those 52 and 62 years of age and older. Our mission is fairly clear. It is to create a thriving communities by having a passionate and steadfast commitment to every resident we serve. Sparrow residents spend their time doing what they most enjoy out of life while limiting the maintenance and expenses of owning a home. We provide a broad range of social and fitness activities, over 35 activities a month with new neighbors and friends, while always having 24 access to our over 15,000 square foot clubhouse. You're able to soak up the sun around our resort style swimming pool, have a cup of coffee at our coffee bar with friends and neighbors before getting your day started, pick up a book or a magazine in our library, our business center, or invite family and friends to lunch in our private multi-purpose room. You can even sit back and watch a football game or a good movie in our state-of-the-art media room. For the best part, you're able to use and enjoy these wonderful amenities and services as often as you like. With active adult communities in Texas, North Carolina, and Phoenix, I'm sure Sparrow Living has a wonderful community and new friends waiting for you. If you have questions or would like to request additional information about us, please feel free to reach out to one of our leasing associates in your area and to find out more about Sparrow Living in your community. Many thanks again for joining us, and we hope you enjoy our presentation featuring Ms. Carol Marak. I wish to welcome you to Ms. Carol Marak. Thanks again for joining us.
Well, thank you, John. I appreciate the invitation. I appreciate Saleha, Mara, and Sage for inviting me today and to present to your audience. So welcome to Get the Future You Want. I am going to show you how you can design for the best of the rest of your life. And this is the strategy that I used for myself. And I started working on my future plan about 10 years ago. So just please know that this strategy takes a while. So it's not a once and done deal. However, there are some strategies and timelines as well as worksheets that you can apply as you move forward through your life. Which reminds me that you will also be given a worksheet, which is it'll be in a PDF document that you can download from the website, and I'm sure that link will be sent to you and posted after this webinar. My name is Carol Marak, as John just said, and I'm the solo aging go-to authority. And I have become the leading authority by leading some large publications like the New York Times, Washington Post, USA Today, and several others. And the best part of being featured is that my Elder Orphan Facebook group that I created several years ago, and of course me too, but we appreciate having the awareness built by many leading publications, because this is a very tough topic for many people who find themselves living alone at home as they grow older. Now, for a moment, please imagine that you have a magic wand and think, how do you want to live your life? How do you want it to be in 1, 2, 3 years from now, even 5 years from now? And I want you to hold on to that thought as I walk you through this presentation, because I'm going to share alternatives to the way you're currently thinking, which opens up to getting more of what you want through self-knowledge as well as understanding. So learning more about yourself, and then applying foresight techniques, and then looking for relative clues into your future. There are two thought leaders that I'd like to introduce you to, and they're both acquainted and associated with the Milken Institute, which is the Center for the Future of Aging. And Dr. Laura Carstensen, who's a professor of psychology at Stanford, and she's also the executive director at Stanford Center on longevity. And she says the small choices we make on a daily basis exert far more influence over our health and well-being than our own genes. Yet we are relatively insensitive to the patterns that put us at risk, like spending more money than we earn, eating poorly, disengaging from our neighbors and our friends. And to make matters worse, it's difficult, if not impossible, for people to see into the distant future. And we take great care to ensure that we feel happy this evening, but we take far less care of our future selves. And Dr. Frida Lewis Hall, who's the Chief Medical Officer at Pfizer, who is also associated with the Milken Institute, she says that older age is different from what it was for our parents. And it's time for a new mindset when it comes to aging and life stages. By overcoming fear and opening ourselves to the possibilities, there is much we can do individually and collectively to improve the odds that our advancing years will be a new stage of growth. So that kind of sums up where I'm going within this presentation. And I hope you walk away with a lot of motivation, as well as a lot of hopeful feelings that you too can have the best of the rest of your life. The most critical key to having a successful life in the years ahead is having a social support network, a strong social support network. And you create that by living in a community, getting and staying involved, maintaining ties to a place of worship, getting a pet if you want one, and then dining with others using adaptive technology, as well as staying in touch with your neighbors and your close friends. And the wonderful things are the lifestyle that Saleha, Sage, and Mara have created through their active adult apartment homes, is that they help you as a resident to nurture a life that you deserve. And if they really encourage and cultivate healthier and more fit lifestyles, and they encourage people in the similar life stages where you can meet and live around others and build lifelong friendships, and also to contribute to society and leave a lasting legacy, which is so important to us. And Saleha, Sage, and Mara also helps us maintain a free living type of lifestyle, which will facilitate a fun-filled and connected experience that indulges our soul, which will help us rediscover and forge the vital relationships for building a strong social support system. And here is what that really drove and motivated me to create my plan for the future. And it was while I was giving care to both of my parents. And it really became my roadmap for the future. And the things I noticed that my parents really needed from me and my two sisters was help with transportation, daily living tasks, social connections, housing and the community to build a strong community where they lived. And also they needed help with financial and legal decisions. So my sisters and I really helped our parents with all of these issues. And when they passed, it occurred to me, and I questioned, who is going to do all of that for me? Because I am a solo ager. I am not married, I don't have children, and I have few family members who live around me. So solo agers are individuals who are widowed. We can be single people. We can be divorced individuals. We can even be married people because it's really about not having the local nearby support to help us with those issues that we face later on. So I started to really create my strong social support system. And I realized that I do have siblings, however, they don't live that close to me. And secondly, they are a lot older than I am. I say a lot, but not really a lot, but they are older than me. And I know that down the road, I don't want to depend on them. I do have nieces and nephews. However, they have their own parents to take care of. So I started working on my strong support system through my friends, my close friends, and started creating more contacts and people that I could build relationships with. And then my faith organization, as well as my community, either where I lived and also in the larger community. And this is something that we all must do, especially as we grow older, because who knows who will be around, whether or not we can depend on our family, even if we do have children. Perhaps they might move far away. So I needed to come up with a plan. And I needed a way to empower myself. And I knew the only way to do that was through self-knowledge and understanding. And what I mean by that is learning all I could do about me in terms of my health and other aspects of myself, really my health, my money, my social connections, my engagement. How can I take care of myself in terms of personal care concerns? So it's really learning about myself and then taking responsibility. And I knew that I first needed to, the things that I could control were my attitude as well as my commitment to self. So I started with my health. And it's one of the aspects that we all have to face sooner or later. And we need to really figure out just how healthy am I? Because as we grow older, things begin to happen and shift within our own health concerns. So I met with my doctor and a dietitian, and we came up with a care plan. We looked at all of my preventative type tests, the results of them, my blood tests, as well as my family medical history. And the three of us came up with a care plan. So it took about 3 years, well, actually more like 5 years to get from where I was 5 years ago to where I am today. But I'm happy to say that I'm in excellent health. And it's all because I started to change and adapt my body to its needs as I grew older. The other aspect I looked at next, and I knew it was going to be very important, was my money and my finances. And my financial advisor told me to, Carol, save as much as you can. So that's what I did. And I actually started that, excuse me, about 6 years ago. And then I looked at having easy access to where I lived, because at the time I was living in the suburbs, and I knew that I had to, which really forced me to drive my errands. And I knew that that's not how I wanted to live, because my parents were totally dependent on their daughters to drive them around. And after I evaluated my location, I looked at my housing, and I felt very, very isolated because I lived in the suburbs. So as I'm walking you through this presentation, please know that you're going to get a PDF file with these worksheets. So you're going to start planning for your own future, at least start to assess where you are right now in these different aspects. Okay, so the bigger plan, as I started to look at my future, I knew how I wanted to live. And so what I did is I started to imagine what it is and what would it look like, you know, several years down the road. What exactly, how do I want to live? And so first I imagined what I wanted, and then I had to come back and look exactly where I am right now, where I had to describe my health, my money, all aspects around my concerns. And then I identified the motive, the reason that I wanted to change, because I knew that this is what I wanted. However, this is the way it looks right now. And I knew for me to go from here to there, something's going to have to drive me and motivate me to get there, because it does take effort, time, and focus, my attitude, and it takes a big commitment to make this happen. However, it can happen. It did for me. So I started to look at all of my strengths and my weaknesses and my opportunities and the threats around each aspect. And I'll address that in a moment. So in essence, my what, it was driven by my why, which gave me my sweet spot. And what I mean by that is, well, let me back up a second. Like Viktor Frankl says, those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. So your why is really the motivating factor that will get you to what you want. And here's what happened for me, my sweet spot. My what, I wanted a fully engaged lifestyle. My why, the thing that was driving my what is because I was isolated and lonely. So I knew that if I continued to be isolated and lonely in the suburbs, I would likely become very depressed, which will exacerbate or could exacerbate chronic illnesses, and certainly would exacerbate depression and really lessen having a good life. So I started to work a plan and found my sweet spot, which was an urban area living in a highly engaged high-rise living. And what was so wonderful about finding your sweet spot is it will actually be the answer to many issues that you might face. For example, when I moved to a high-rise living, I started to talk to more people. I didn't feel isolated and alone. I was rarely lonely because there were people around. I had neighbors I could depend on if I had an accident, which I did one time. I cut my finger really badly, and my neighbor helped me. So I was able to solve my isolation issue. And being in an urban area, I started walking more. I ran, you know, I walked my errands, and guess what increased at that time? My health and my fitness, because I was very active. So as you can see, when you find your sweet spot, it really helps identify and solve, and it gives you it gives you unintended consequences, which solves other issues. So how do you get there? You know, this is not a once and done deal, and it certainly takes time. However, it is possible. And where you start is, remember I mentioned you shift your attitude and you make a commitment. So you also shift, how do you shift your attitude? Where you stop looking at problems and you start focusing on possibilities. Because when we focus on problems, it really gives you a sense of disempowerment. And at least for me, when I look at problems, it feels like all my options are gone. And I feel disempowered, and it feels like things are impossible. However, once I shift my attitude to possibilities, it really opens up my options, and it opens my mind to looking at other ways of doing research and finding ways to solve my issues. For example, when we focus on the problems, what we're really doing is resolving threats or negative consequences. And we're focusing on managing emotional distress and managing our fears, and finding ways to overcome a barrier, for example. And so when you're focused on problems, does that feel very motivating when you're thinking about problems? No, it doesn't. However, when you shift to possibilities, it opens. You start looking at all your options and the positive connections, and it helps you ask questions which will give you insights and clarity and choices. And it replaces expectations with plans. And you start to collect more information, and it helps you really focus on what you have control of. And other benefits, and I'll say the biggest benefit of possibility thinking, it really helps you find your sweet spot. And it opens ways to receiving help and support, and you start feeling less afraid and definitely less isolated and vulnerable. And you'll see that you have so much more to offer other people, and you'll feel valuable and worthy. And speaking for myself, I have a much more enjoyable and stress-free life now that I have opened myself to possibilities. And also an author by the name of Ronald Beghetto, in his book, Big Wins, Small Steps, How to Lead For and With Creativity, he says it helps us, possibility thinking helps us enhance our perceptions. So we really start to let go of old habits and thoughts, which help us move forward. And we do that through redefining our problems, challenging our assumptions. And both of those will open and gain new insights and solutions to getting more of what you want. And here's a few examples of redefining or restating our problems. For example, when I was living in the suburbs in a two-story home, I felt very isolated, right? I was lonely, I was depressed. I felt the world was caving in on me because I only had me to depend on. So I kept asking, how can I feel less isolated and lonely where I live right here in the suburbs? And I kept asking that question, and it was like, well, I don't know, and I just felt more and more defeated, actually. However, once I started doing research on how to strategize and really open my mind to possibilities, I started asking different questions like, how can I enhance the connection where I live? What are the ways, how can I live, or where can I live that would open me up to more people, to have more social engagement, to having more access to individuals where we can become good friends and help one another out. And then when it also looking at my health, I asked, how can I have better health? Well, I don't know. How can I? But when I started looking at my barriers, what were the barriers to having good health? And what decision can I make today that would positively affect my health? Well, that opens up a lot, doesn't it? A lot of the barriers for me were eating too much red meat, eating too much sugar, eating too much bread, and I can go on and on about the list of the barriers, which really, it was like, oh my gosh, I mean, it just started to answer questions of how I can start shifting my own nutrition and my diet. And what other ways can I positively affect my health? Well, I want to be able to be fit, so start walking more, walking my errands and being more engaged with the people around me. And another one that as a matter of fact, I'm still dealing with today is how can I be less dependent on a car? I mean, I am definitely less dependent because I live an urban lifestyle. So I'm thinking about selling my car because I don't put very many miles on it. But before I do, I really need to look at the value of what transportation gives me. And then what challenges might come up and how can I meet them when I don't have a car. So that's called challenge your assumptions. And I'm currently doing this one actually because I am serious about selling my car. So I know the benefits of selling my car is that it will increase my budget because I won't have to maintain it. I won't have to pay for property taxes and et cetera, insurance, and all of that goes along with owning a car. However, the biggest one for me in terms of benefit is not being stressed about traffic. So, okay, so those are the benefits and those are the things that I know I will gain. But what should I look for about the disadvantages? Okay, what am I going to do if I have an emergency? Who do I call on if I can't drive myself to the urgent care center? Who do I call if there's a thunderstorm outside and I can't walk my errands, or if I have a doctor's appointment? How do I resolve that? So as you can see, you start challenging your assumptions. And once again, I am still looking at whether or not I want to sell my car. And I've been thinking about it for a year. So this is not a once and done deal. That's an overnight thing. It takes time and it takes forethought, and it takes, challenging some of the assumptions that you might have, and really challenge them. Okay, so you're going to sell your car. So what are you going to do if you cut your finger again? How are you going to handle that? So you have to get real. Okay, so now that we have shifted our mindset, and again, you will get a worksheet and a guide that walks you through how to start looking at shifting your mindset. And after that, then you look at all of your top aging concerns, but you're going to take it one issue at a time. And remember, I started with health. And then social connections and support and location, etc. So these are the top issues that my parents faced, and likely I will as well. And maybe you've been a family caregiver, so you know what it's like to grow older and have these tough concerns. So when you take one concern at a time, you self-appraise each area. You give it a value of 1 to 10, 1 being the most difficult or completely dissatisfied, and 10 is, wow, this feels great, so I don't really need to work on this one too much. But you have to be honest with yourself, and you pick a value from 1 to 10. And again, you'll have that guide in this little download after the webinar. So this is the Aging Well circle that I created for myself. And my goal was to make this circle as full as possible and make them all 10s. Here's how my life started out. I was suffering with money, and my housing, I was very dissatisfied because I was again living very isolated in an area that I didn't particularly care for. But the goal again is to make it a full circle. And I have to tell you, after starting out like this, it really is, my life really is more a full circle now. And another strategy is really understanding what your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So you're taking a deeper dive into each of the issue. And just because you might rate that issue, say a 6 or a 7, there are many strengths about it that you don't want to just toss away. So make a list of each strength of each aspect, and then the weaknesses about them, and then look at the threats, and then the opportunities that you're shifted by shifting your mindset or having a possibility mindset will allow you to start looking at what's possible and looking for opportunities. So your final aim is really to turn your weaknesses into strengths and your threats into opportunities. And when you're looking at your SWOT, your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, always be realistic, identify where you are today, be specific, and avoid guessing. Be sure, make it simple. You know, don't overthink it and start analyzing. Don't overthink it, okay? You'll go down a rabbit hole. And be subjective and listen to your gut. And here is a worksheet that you will have included in the PDF. I'm not going to walk you through it now, but it is included. And this is another, what I call a worksheet or a little timeline. It helped me get really clear on my strengths and my weaknesses, and even my opportunities and threats. I looked at, for example, my diet. I looked at seeing what's working about it and what's not. And if I address that one right now with you, for what was working, well, I did have access to good, healthy foods. I did eat occasionally, have fruits and quite a few vegetables actually. However, what was not working was too much red meat and really not enough vegetables and not enough fruit. And I was eating too much bread, and there were a couple of things that it's not necessary to discuss here. But so you're going to take a deeper dive into all of the aspects that you're looking at right now. So there you go. So once you have assessed, first shift your mindset, right? And then you're going to address each aspect that you will face as you grow older. And then you're going to assess it, see what you need to work on, what needs changing, make a plan of how you're going to change your health, for example, or the things that you're going to do to create more engagement in your life, however or whatever aspect you're dealing with at this time. And when you do, you're now ready to create your dream and find your sweet spot. So you'll select your top concern, describe what needs to change, describe why you want to change it, and then list your goals and describe the issue after the change. So when you're describing what it looks like after the change, what you're doing is creating a vision board. If you're visual like me, that's what I did. Some people call it a dream board. I call it a vision board. And I actually created one for every aspect that I wanted to change. I created one on my health, my location, my housing, social engagements, and fitness. And so what I did is I cut out pictures from magazines that were gathered around my home. And I started looking and cutting out pictures that really grabbed my attention. And I felt my gut saying, yeah, this is it. So I cut it out and then I glued it to a board, right? You know, one of those vision boards that you can buy in the drugstore. Poster card board, that's what it's called. And then once I created it, I put it up in my bedroom and I looked at it every day when I woke up and before I went to bed. So it was kind of reaffirming to me, this is how I want to live. And while you're creating your vision board, be sure to create your special place. I did in my own living room. I lit a candle, I had a cup of tea, have a glass of wine, whatever helps you feel special in your place where you're going to create your vision. And always, always bring your happy and excited feelings while you're creating your vision. Well, I really want to thank you all for watching this webinar today. I want to thank Saleha, Mara, and Sage for having me. And again, download the PDF and start working on your own future. And believe me, it's okay to become frustrated with it occasionally, but continue to look for your possibilities, because believe me, they are out there and you can create the life that you deserve.